Amazonia will be offered to you tomorrow. Will you be ready? Will you be ready for governance? Do you have the institutions and expertise in terms of human capacity and state institutions to transform that space into one where our children can say, we fought a good fight? The reason why we are here is not simply because we want to create an alternative platform or pull our resources together. It's because we reject fraud. I don't know why you fight. I know all of us say we fight for independence, and I always remind you, independence is an abstract political construct. You fight for that abstract political construct, not as an objective. There are the micro issues within that political construct that you fight for. The right as a woman to have equal rights within your own country, to have opportunity in terms of education, to have a good health system that can take care of the weak and the sick, stop a woman dying every minute and giving birth. Those are the real issues we fight for. We fight for transparency. I invite every one of you to reject fraud. Reject it from the depth of your heart, and no matter what the opponent, the violent minority tells you.
I'm sure many of you have seen pictures, videos, and other images that have been circulating on social media. Images that have emerged from the colonial capital of Cameroun. Words cannot describe what Cameroun has become. Not what the government has become, not what the people have become, but what Cameroun has become. Beautiful times. There is a leadership crisis in Cameroun. There's a governance crisis in Cameroun. Norway is caught in between the rock and a hard place. To save Mr. Biya, to continuously support France, or to stand for the future, or to stand with the Amazonian people, or to stand for justice. Today, we are going to be examining the collapse of Cameroun, the chaos within Cameroun, and what the Amazonian people should prepare themselves for. It's fun time if you're an Amazonian. And if you can watch and understand what's happening within Cameroun, every Amazonian should be laughing. Every Amazonian should be proud. Every Amazonian should be celebrating. But every Amazonian should be preparing. What is this about? Yesterday, I came across a post made by a lady called Mabel Boma. She posted about 12 or 15 images from Cameroun These are pictures and videos of how garbage, how the Cameroon colonial government in their own political capital. This is the face of Cameroon. The capital of every country is the face of that country. Now pictures emerge from Cameroon. Everywhere is littered with garbage. It's a disaster. It's an environmental disaster. It's a health disaster. But that's the face of Cameroon. That is the face of Cameroon. It tells a picture. They said a picture is worth what? 1,000 words? I think this is worth 10,000 words. Or maybe 1,000,000 words. What does that tell you? So here you have a government that has been in place for 42 years. And at the age of 92, Mr. Biya wants to seek re-election for another 7-year term mandate. So before people contemplate about, hey, maybe we should give this guy another chance. Maybe the people of Cameroon should take a look at their country and be honest with themselves and have real conversation with themselves. If this is what you've had in the last 42 years, what makes you think that in the next 7 years it's going to be something different? If they haven't been able to clean the streets, to clean the garbage in the streets, then what else can they do? This is the capital of your country. If they cannot keep basic sanitation and remove garbage from the streets, what else can they do? That is a governance crisis. That is a leadership crisis. And it tells everyone, it tells not only Cameroonians themselves, it tells Africans, and it tells the rest of the world. This is a country being governed by monkeys. Cameroon is governed by monkeys. It's a monkey republic. Because only monkeys would allow themselves to live in such environments. This is not for humans. This is not for humans. This is a monkey republic. It's not even a banana republic. It's a monkey republic. Now imagine this. These are people that cannot even take care of themselves. And then they're telling the rest of the world that they want to govern Amazonia, that they want to occupy Amazonia, that they want to fight Amazonia. They don't have money to clean up the streets of Douala and Yaoundé. They don't have the money to keep their own streets clean. So how can they govern Amazonia? How can they occupy Amazonia? They don't have money for sanitation. How will they have money for war? This beats human imagination. You don't have money for sanitation? How can you have money for war? You can't clean the streets. How can you occupy another territory? You cannot administer yourselves. You cannot govern yourselves. You cannot take care of yourselves. How can you go take care of an occupied territory and provide effective occupational governance? You cannot develop yourself. How can you develop an occupied territory? You don't have the resources to take care of yourself. How can you go take care of an occupied territory? Cameroon, it's a monkey republic. It's a monkey republic. It's a country governed by monkeys. Look how the people are living. They're making a mockery of the whole system. Well, I mean, we should appreciate their sense of humor. You know, most of you watched the video, I think that was last week. You watched the video of a woman, a beautiful young woman. Right in the middle of Yaoundé. She undressed herself, took off her clothes, including her panties. Yes. She became naked just to make a mockery of the system. And then she took a number 2. She opened her bag. People are filming. People are taking photographs. And she took a toilet tissue from her handbag. Man, and she helped herself. She pulled her wig and used it to help herself as a sign of a protest. That's courage. So Cameroonians have developed a sense of humor. They turn all of this into comedy to mock the Monkey Republic and mock Mr. Biya and mock Diongute and mock anyone who's in the government calling themselves that, you know, we are in charge. What are you in charge of? I'm curious. What are you in charge of? You're in charge of terror? You're in charge of people speaking out? You can arrest them and jail them? Is that what you're in charge of? So, Mr. Biya, what are you in charge of? Mr. Diongute, you call yourself a colonial prime minister, head of government. What are you in charge of? What are you really in charge of? What are you in charge of? You call Yaoundé the capital of Cameroon. Are you in charge of the capital? If you're in charge of the capital, why has the capital become a garbage dump? A dumping ground? This is Cameroon. How did we end up here? Monkeys want to come and occupy Amazonia? They eat in the same place. They drink in the same place. They take a shit in the same place. Monkeys. That's the lifestyle of a monkey. So, what is the structure of power in Cameroon? And why is that structure so dysfunctional? Let's take a look at how the colonial parliament is structured. And this starts to give you a sense. Do not expect anything different in Cameroon in 2025. Whatever you call an election, whatever you call, whether it's the the regional or the presidential election, because the structure of the parliament will help you to understand what's coming. Let's take a look. That's the structure of parliament. That's the CPDM with 152 seats, all right, out of 180. The CPDM has 152 seats. The SDF, they have 5 seats. And those 5 seats, they are members of the SDF directly appointed by BIA, not because they won any seats. It's just members of the SDF political party appointed by BIA to be members of the colonial parliament. The same with UNDP, and then PC, RN. They have 5 seats. You have UDC with 4. You have FSNC. They have 3 seats. Then MDR 2 seats, and then you look at UMS. They have 2 seats. That is the structure of power and the structure of governance currently in Cameroon. SDF they have what? 5 seats. Mr. Osi is telling you he wants to win the popular votes. So CPDM with 152 seats, here is what they are going to do. You should be turned off. I'll take all business calls later. So here's what's going to happen. Mr. Bia doesn't campaign. The 52 parliamentarians will be sent to their various constituencies to guarantee 100% vote. They will have a lot of money, bags of money, lots of money, yes, bags of cash to take to their various constituencies to guarantee 100% victory. So now SDF has only 5 members of parliament. So you're going to send these 5 members of parliament to do what? All right. So number 1, Mr. Bia is going to send out the 152 parliamentarians to their various constituencies with lots of cash. All right? To pre-bribe everybody, to pre-corrupt everybody in advance. Number 1. It's a culture where an average human being, an average person, is struggling to make ends meet. So which means survival is the basis of their existence. Listen to this. Mr. Bia understands that survival is the basis of the existence of Cameroonese. Survival, which means their primary preoccupation is food. Their primary preoccupation is not about tomorrow. It's now. I don't want to think about tomorrow. I don't want to think about the future. Don't tell me to think about complex issues. That causes me trauma. What can I get today? What can I get now? Survival instincts. Whoever can give me food today, whoever can give me alcohol today. I need food, I need bread, I need sardine, I need nkumkum and granite soup. Yes. I need bread and sardine. and I need 3-3 export. I need a bottle of Beaufort. I need a bottle of Guinness. You can give me that. You give me a big picture of Mr. Beer. I will be singing Mr. Beer from morning till night. Why? Because Beer has taken care of my survival needs. And that's what matters. That's the game. You keep the people at the lower level threshold of thinking so that the only thing that matters to them is to survive. All right? The critical faculty has not been developed, has not been sensitized. So the frontal lobe of the brain that is responsible for reasoning, thinking, and conceptualization is still very dormant. The primitive brain of fight or flight is the only thing that is active. All right? The frontal lobe that is responsible for vision, dreams, goals, planning, critical thinking, objective reasoning, the capacity to question the cause and do an evaluation of cause and effect is still dormant in the brains of most Cameroonese. The education system wasn't created to help the people to know how to think. The education system is created to help the people to survive. So the frontal lobe is still very dormant. That's why the society is that way. Only the primitive part of the brain that's responsible for survival is currently active. It's a consciousness. It's a level of thinking across the board. That's why people like Mr. Bia, the bees, the army, the police, the gendarme, they understand this psychology. And that's why violence and the use of force in order to constantly crush any resistance is the primary weapon of choice. Because survivor people, their worst fear is pain. All right? So that's the first layer of governance. Now the second layer of governance, what Mr. Bia has really been very successful, and please, I'm saying this from an educational research perspective. Mr. Bia has been very successful in building communal power, capturing communal power within the structure of the state of Cameroon. He's done that successfully for 42 years. That's why he has lived in power. He's been in power for so long. So what he did was, from the onset, he understood the society is a traditional communal society. So the best way to govern them, the best way to integrate everybody into a centralized system of power, it is to use those communal, tribal, all right, ethnic networks to build power. So he will, like for example, the state of Manu. In the state of Manu, it's not the political power that governs and gives Bia power, occupational authority. It is the traditional ethnic leadership that the people believes in, the trust. Mr. Bia has captured those entities in all the subdivisions in Manu, in all the tribes, in every tribe, including the tribe of Boki. There are specific chiefs and specific elites. They have all been integrated into the CPDM party. In every tribe, they select the most influential families, and they will become the voice, representatives of the occupational governance structure. They make them become wealthy, they give them positions, they give them power, they give them pride, they give them prestige. And now these individuals, these people, this group of persons, they now have to protect the wealth they've acquired through their relationship with the CPDM party and with Mr. Biya. They now have to protect that power. They now have to protect that elite class that they have been elevated to. This is how Mr. Biya governs. That person now is responsible. They said, hey, listen, we've never had any linkage directly to the central government. If we want drinking water, we have to support Mr. Biya. If we want a clinic, we have to pay loyalty to Mr. Biya. If we want our children to have employment within the system, we have to support Mr. Biya. This is how they build a network of loyalty across the Cameroonian territory and the Ambazonian territory. All across Ambazonians, all ethnic groups, tribe, villages, everything, all the elites, this is how they have acquired power, wealth, and fame. Now they are not fighting, they are not working to protect the interest of the community or their constituencies. They are working to protect the power that Mr. Biya has given them. They are working to protect the wealth Mr. Biya has helped them to create. Their goal is to protect that wealth, that power, that class, and the fame they've gotten. That's the network of power. If you're an elected official, you have no power. Elected officials in Cameroon do not have power. The power is in these tribal networks Mr. Biya has created and has built through time. Those tribal networks will guarantee 100% election fraud, even when their communities and the population vote otherwise. Everything will be rigged. You don't win. If you're high school, you are an elementary school, the head of an elementary school, they call it headmaster, an elementary school principal, you must vote CPDM. You're a teacher, you must vote CPDM. You're a secondary school teacher, you're a secondary school principal, you are directly integrated into the CPDM Central Committee network. You must vote CPDM or you lose your job. So across Ambazonia and across Cameroon, they have built this corrupt network that is directly, that survival now is directly linked to the CPDM system. Without the CPDM, you won't have a job, you won't have a say in the society, you won't have a say in the community. What you're seeing happening in Manu, it's all these colonial elites. That's what they've done. That's what they are doing. They are responsible in the corruption of Ambazonian forces. They are responsible in the bribery of Ambazonian forces. They are responsible in the selling out, the buying out of Ambazonian forces. They are responsible in corrupting, in compromising Ambazonian forces and Ambazonian activists. Once you understand the psychology of the occupier, Mr. Biya does not do election campaigns. It is the Agbobalas, the Tabetandos, the Ayoktakunchong. Now they are the messenger. They are the disciples of Mr. Biya. And they must guarantee Mr. Biya 100% election victory in their various states, in their villages, in their communities, in their constituencies. Or you're done. You don't vote a CPDM, you out. You lost power. They will seize your wealth. They will seize your businesses, which all came from the corrupt system. Yes. They will seize everything. That is the network. Churches. Every bishop must be loyal to the CPDM party. Every leader within the Presbyterian Church, the Baptist Church, must pay allegiance to Mr. Biya. They have all been corrupted, bought over. Funky was the most corrupt because of the role he helped to play to help Mr. Biya to pacify the Ambazonian resistance. Funky and the bishop in Bamenda, Nkia, were responsible in pacifying the Ambazonian resistance, responsible in buying out forces, responsible in corrupting forces, responsible in setting villages and communities to set them up for ethnic violence and ethnic conflict. And then they get rewarded by Mr. Biya in order to transform the conflict, the Ambazonia-Cameroon conflict, into something else. Funky has been rewarded. They built him a house, over 430 million CFA in Victoria, waterfront. The moderator of the Presbyterian Church. His house is there in Victoria, in Limbe. 430 million. It's all part of the CPDM corrupt money. All right? So we all should understand how the game is played. This is critical for the Ambazonian people. So it's not just about talking. It's about understanding the psychology and the methodologies of your enemy, how they work and how they function and how they operate. So that we can recalibrate the strategies to become more effective. It's easy to say you want independence. It's easy to say you want freedom. It's easy. But do you understand the thinking system of the occupier and how they function? And how do you circumvent that? How do you change that? This is critical. That's why we must understand why Cameroon is the way it is. It's not the political power. It's the ethnic, elitist structures of power they have built that is outside of the political power. Now, when you integrate the ethnic, the religious, and you integrate that with the elitist class of power, and you integrate that into the political power, that's a very powerful network of corruption. That's why he's been in power for 40 years. It's not because he's some magician. It's not because he goes to Malta and brings some religious people to give him some form of mythical and mystical power. It's not because the Pope has laid his hands or put his hands on the head of Mr. Biya and blessed him, and now all of a sudden Mr. Biya has some mythical and eternal power that he can control the stars and make the moon to dance to his tune. It's just an understanding. Once you understand how they set up the people to live at a survival level so that they don't have the capacity to think, they don't have the capacity to look at the cause and effect of things, to have logical, objective reasoning and thinking, you have to understand the game. It's a game. It's a game to keep the people at a survival level, to depend on their own, on that system for their own existence and for their own survival. It's a game. You can undo the game. The current Cameroon, the current structure of the opposition political parties in Cameroon, they are impotent. They are weak. They don't have what it takes to fight against what I've described. They don't have the complex mastery of these networks and how to undermine them. They don't. OC doesn't have it. OC is a member of the CPDM governance structure. He's one of the board of directors of one of the public companies. His own survival depends on the CPDM. Just like Fundi's survival depended on Mr. Biya. So that's not an opposition party. It's not. It's a proxy of the CPDM government. Look at Kamto. The only choice the Cameroonese people would have had would have been Maurice Kamto. But day in, day out, he's proven to be also be spineless. He's afraid of his own life. Doesn't want to risk it because he's, displayed himself to be this professor of law, someone who believes in the rule of law. You believe in the rule of law in a tyrannical system. It's very contradictory. There's no rule of law in Cameroon. It's not governed by rule of law. You saw what it did to you in 2018. Was that based on the rule of law? So there's a lot of inconsistencies and contradictions within the thinking system of these people. You cannot be logical. You cannot use logic to fight an illogical system. You cannot use reasoning to fight an unreasonable system. You can't. You can't use the rule of law to fight a system that is based on the rule of unlawfulness. You can't. So Kamto does not have what it takes to mobilize the Cameroonese people to, number one, bring down the system first. You cannot win an election in such a corrupt system that has been in place for 42 years. It's never going to happen. They control the Constitutional Council. All members of ELECAM, the leadership board of ELECAM, they are all members of the CPDM Central Committee. These are not independent human rights organizations that are responsible for the electoral board. The electoral board, it's all members of the CPDM Central Committee. Now you go to the various regions, at the helm of the leadership, you have the governor. And then you have all these other colonial structure they've put in place. How are you going to penetrate all of this stuff? Who are you, Maurice Kamto? Are you kidding me? The people of Cameroon have to wake up to reality. And they should let go of the issues of human rights and issues of law. The system wasn't built for issues of human rights or rule of law. It's a predatory system. Mr. Biya is a predator. Atanganji is a predator. All right? They believe in destroying any opposition using maximum force and maximum violence. So, my advice to anyone who wants to be the next president of Cameroon, don't go in for elections. You will set up Mr. Biya, you will give Mr. Biya another 7-year mandate. We all watched this in 2018 when within the just days when the elections were going on, Mr. Biya woke up one morning and appointed Mr. Clement Atangana. Someone who's been retired, is probably in his late 80s and maybe late 90s. They appointed him to be the what? The president of the Constitutional Council, to guarantee victory for Mr. Biya. Come on. Understand the game. Rule number 1, dismantle the system. All the political opposition parties in Cameroon, the opposition political parties in Cameroon, all right? Number 1, Camto should unite the various factions and the various opposition parties in Cameroon. They all should agree. No one should go in for any elections. All right? But I know the SDF will not like that, because they want to accompany Mr. Biya and hand over that victory to Mr. Biya. So the SDF will not want to do this. Maybe the party of Edith Kawala, Cabral Libil, and others, they should stand up and ask for a constitutional change and a change in the electoral laws. Number 1, a change in the constitution. Number 2, a change in the electoral laws. Without that, there should be no elections. Don't go in for an election and walk a system back into power and hand them another 7-year mandate and keep the people of Cameroon in the same spot. So rule number 1, there should be no elections in Cameroon in 2025. If you want change, stand for change. Election is not the path to change. You have to change the system, and then you create new laws and new rules, and you set up your country and build a great future for your people. You cannot do it through elections. There are no elections in Cameroon. They are only guarantees of results for Mr. Biya. It's a corrupt system. So there are no transparent and credible elections in Cameroon. Elections are now under the control of Mr. Atanga Jipor, Minister of Territorial Administration. It's not going to take any prisoners. Camto could even go to jail before the elections. All right? They will allow their friends like Osi, Agbobala, and the rest to be roaming around because they are playing the same game. Osi has no way to convince an average Cameroonese. What will he do? Go to the north and convince the people of the north to do what? Where the imams are there. The imams are the centers of power in the far north, in the north, and in Adamawa. The imams are the centers of power. They control the power, they hold the power. These imams are more stronger than any governor. These are the people that controls. These are the leaders that have full control of the population. All right? Ethnically, religiously. That's their way of life. The government is so far away from them. These are the real authorities. And that's where change has to come from. Until you get their buy-in, you're wasting your time. Okay? Until you get the buy-in of these powerful religious traditional leaders, you're wasting your time. They call the shots on behalf of the grand puppet. Okay? Before the elections, each of these imams will probably have 100 million francs. Each of the imams will probably have 100 million, 200 million, 300 million. Mr. Biya doesn't give a shit. It's state money anyway. They will spread the state money all across the Amazonian territory and the Cameroonian territory. They will spread it to every village, every town, every community. The game is over. So while people are running around talking about elections, the game it's already been set on the ground. And that's why if people like Kamto are smart, what they need to do is to call for mass protests across the territory of Cameroon. Mass protest. Mobilize the population and keep them on the streets for days. And demand for total change of the constitution. And you demand a change in the electoral laws. Fix the system before you go in for any election. Any election will put Mr. Biya back in power. All right. That's the structure of Cameroon. That's how things are functioned. That's how they operate. Now, let's go to something much more interesting. Last week, we explained to the Cameroonese people, we explained to the Ambazonian people about something that's happening in Cameroon. Most of the elite forces in Cameroon that are called the Bs, yes, Battalion Rapid Intervention, Battalion Rapid Intervention, yes, the B. I remember, I think that was 2015, 2016. I went home and and my brother had a tank tops. We had shorts and people thought we were part of some foreign special forces. So these elite forces in Cameroon, called the Bs, these are specialized forces that Cameroon has invested a lot of money to train. These forces were created around 2013, 2014. That's when the B emerged. They are a counter-terrorism force when Boko Haram was causing a lot of problems in the far north regions of Cameroon. And they had been advised by the Americans, by the French, and by the Israelis to constitute and build a counter-insurgency force, a counter-terrorism force. So now, they built this counter-terrorism and counter-insurgency force to fight Boko Haram. And Mr. Biya realized, why am I using the presidential guard to suppress the population? Let me expand this counter-terrorism and counter-insurgency force to become the supreme force to maintain law and order in Cameroon. So they transform and enlarge the Bs from a force that is responsible in counter-terrorism and counter-insurgency, from a force that is specialized in defeating these terrorists, fighting, dismantling, and defeating these terrorists. Guess what? Mr. Biya is now using that same force to terrorize the Cameroonese people. And by 2016, 2017, that force was deployed in Ambazonia. It wasn't the police to go maintain peace and security. It's the B. This is a force trained for counter-terrorism and counter-insurgency. And now they are deploying them onto peaceful protesters. We must squash the protest. Kill, rape, maim, burned. Anything on your path. And that's what we've seen. Over time, the Cameroon government cannot pay them. There's no money. The state is bankrupt. The strategy the Ambazonians have put in place has bankrupted Cameroon. It's a bankrupted state. There's no money. Now they live on financial drips from the IMF and World Bank. Every 3 to 6 months, they give them a little bit of hundreds of millions of dollars. I think they're about to dispatch maybe what, another 400 million or another 300 million from the World Bank to the Cameroon government. How long would that last? So they have this rotation of how state workers receive salaries. This month it could be teachers. The next month it could be the police, the army, and the bees. And then the other month it could be university lecturers, before nurses and doctors and colonial councils. So there's no money. So when the war between Russia and Ukraine broke out in 2022, and the Ukrainian government sent out these created these commercials and sent them out across the globe, that the Ukrainian government is recruiting for foreign mercenaries to join the fight. The Americans were pumping hundreds of billions of dollars into Ukraine. So they can afford it. They can take some of this money and use it to recruit foreign mercenaries. So if you have military experience, you'd been in a special force, well, you can go fight in Ukraine. In Cameroon, a bee earns only 67,000 francs. That's $33. Now Ukraine is promising to give them $2,000. So holy shit, and this is a good deal. Why am I fighting for an old man for 67,000 francs, which is $33, when I can go to Ukraine and become a foreign mercenary and make $2,000 a month? So hundreds of Cameroon occupation forces deployed in Ambazonia are leaving the battlefield, are escaping the conflict, and moving to places where they can process them and then bring them to Ukraine to join foreign mercenaries in Ukraine to fight against the Russian government. Early this month, Mr. Putin, you all know about the incursion, the Ukraine forces that made an incursion into the Kursk region of Russia. President Putin had put out a statement to warn anyone and everyone that is caught inside the Russian territory within the Kursk region. If you are caught and you're a foreign mercenary, here is the price you're going to pay. Video number 1, please.
Russian government, how Vladimir Putin has commented on prisoners of war, particularly the foreign fighters, or mercenaries, volunteers, whatever you want to call it. He says that these mercenaries, as he put it, are not covered under the Geneva Convention and do not get the rights of the Geneva Convention. And we've been talking to soldiers about what...
This is critical. Here is what you need to know. To all the Cameroonese bees, to all the Cameroonese policemen, gendarmes, the army that have abandoned Cameroon, that have escaped the poverty and the inhumane living conditions in Cameroon for greener pastures, to fight as foreign mercenaries with the Ukrainian military. If you happen to find yourselves within Kursk region of Ukraine and you've been surrounded as even President Trump has stated, they've all been surrounded. Mr. Putin wants to liberate the Kursk region before any negotiation. That's a message for you. Mr. Putin has declared your presence in the Ukrainian territory that you'll be considered as a terrorist. You will not be covered under the Geneva Convention, and you will not be considered as a prisoner of war. You will be considered as a terrorist. Play the video.
They think about prisoners of war and what the reactions are. Now we've got some pretty intense answers, and it really seems like the fact now is these foreign mercenaries or foreign fighters, foreign volunteers, whatever, as I said, whatever you want to call them, really have two choices, two options, possible outcomes when they're captured by Russian forces: death or jail. And I say jail because there is just...
Those are the two options. That is a journalist right inside the Kursk region of Russia, where about 2,500 remaining Ukrainian forces have been surrounded. And President Putin and President Trump, Mr. Trump was trying to plead with Mr. Putin to say, look, we know you've surrounded these Ukrainian forces in Kursk region. We know your forces have surrounded them, but please do not kill them. That's why they've discovered that most of those forces in Kursk are not Ukrainian forces. Some are Americans, some are British, some are French, some are Polish, some are Norwegians, some are Nigerians. Most of them are foreign mercenaries. There is even a story where the journalist Patrick Lancaster will probably tell you, if you're going to probably hear that story, of a British soldier that was captured in Kursk and what they did to him. Let's listen.
On, I believe, the beginning of the March, a British soldier, mercenary, volunteer, whatever, captured by, well, he was captured months ago by Russian forces, but his court case, his jury trial ended in Russia just at the beginning of this month, and he was sentenced to 19 years. So
he was sentenced to how long? He was sentenced to how long? A British mercenary fighting in Kursk inside Russian territory was captured, was put on trial, and was jailed for 19 years. So, for you, the Camerooners, hungry and desperate bees that have escaped because of poverty, just make sure you are not sent into Kursk region. Make sure you are fighting within the Ukrainian territory. You have all the legal protection of Ukrainian law to fight inside the Ukrainian territory. Don't make any mistake and find yourself inside the Russian territory. Oh, let me also say this. The 4 oblasts, including with Crimea, make sure you don't find yourself in Crimea region, in Donetsk, in Luhansk, or Zaporizhia. The Russian government, which is the root cause of this conflict, where those regions that are predominantly made up of ethnic Russians, it's now considered as part of the Russian territory, make sure you don't find yourself there. Should you find yourself there, you will also be considered a foreign mercenary. And the penalty for that is either death or a long-term prison sentence. All right? So I just wanted to put out this information for anyone, for the Cameroonese and some Ambazonians that are in the colonial military, that are in Ukraine fighting. Play it safe. Play it safe. I'm all for you. I'm happy for you to go make, you're better off making $2,000 a month than for you to be living off $33. All right? I'm all for you. I want more and more Cameroonese bees to leave the territory, go to Ukraine and make $2,000 a month. Leave Ambazonia, cross to Nigeria and contact the Ukrainian government that you are a trained soldier. You've been 5 years, 10 years in the military, in the police, in the gendarmes, and you are interested to help the Ukrainians to fight. They will recruit you, process your papers, and fly you over to Ukraine. We want that for all of you. We want as many Cameroon occupation soldiers, gendarmes, the army, all right, the bees, the police. We want as many of you to leave Ambazonia, go to Ukraine and make $2,000 a month. Don't die in Ambazonia fighting for Mr. Biya. Don't die in Ambazonia for $33 a month. Don't die in Ambazonia fighting for an old man, for a war that is unwinnable, for a war that is illegal, for an illegal occupation and illegal annexation. Don't waste your life for something that is meaningless. Killing Ambazonia, fighting in Ambazonia, killing the Ambazonian people, burning down communities, destroying Ambazonia will haunt your spirit and your soul for the rest of your life, because you know what you are doing is not only wrong, but will eat you up. It's against your own conscience. So you're better off to escape and go to Ukraine. But follow the advice we've given you. Make sure you're not in the 4 Oblast. Make sure you don't find yourself in Crimea. Make sure you don't find yourself in Kursk. Stay within the Ukrainian territory. You'll be fine. Make us fight there for as long as you want and make as much money as you want, because that will help you to take care of your families, take care of your wife, your children, and create better living conditions for them, because the colonial dictator has not offered any of you any opportunity. So that's our advice for anyone fighting in Cameroon. So, all right, ACN said we're good. I'm a researcher, so I spend a lot of my time to study how the top diplomats across the globe, how they do negotiations. I study how head of states, how they make decisions, how they implement decisions, and how they carry out programs and processes for change. I told friends of mine 2 months before the resignation of Mr. Justin Trudeau, the Canadian Prime Minister, I told my friends, I said, look, this is the end of him. He's done. He has nothing else to offer the Canadian people. And he will not be able to withstand the tsunami of Mr. Trump. I told friends 2 months before he said he was going to step down. So we study these things and we study these patterns, and we can predict some of these political patterns. So we're getting some knowledge and we're becoming pretty good. So over the years, I spent a lot of time to do research.
Though there's no
to
doubt
listen-
I'm always
to listen to the best experts in the world about how these processes are done, about how these things are done, in order for us to, in an ongoing basis, to develop and prepare ourselves, because we can begin to model how the best of the best in the world do it. How did they do it? What is the thinking system? Before they go into any negotiation, what is the background work that is done? Before they step into the public and said, hey, we want to mediate a process. What is the background work that has already been done first? And so we saw how the war in the Middle East that has been going on for more than 75 years. And no US government, no government in Europe has been able to make any headway. None. Because everybody is putting these abstractive principles without doing an assessment of the reality of the situation and what each party of the conflict really wants. What do they want? So recently, before Mr. Trump came in, he said, look, what I would like to do is to bring this conflict to an end. It's important for the stability of the world and for the strategic geopolitical interest of the United States, for these regions to have peace and stability. It is for the geopolitical interest of the United States. It's also for the national security interest of the United States, for the conflict between Russia and Ukraine to come to an end, and for the United States to rebuild its relationship with Russia. It's a critical actor in the international community. And the mentality of the Cold War must come to an end. Let's see how we can create a more stable world and where we can become international partners and promote international trade and increase international investments and increase opportunities and innovation for people of the world. It's all part of the political game. But let's play a better political game that benefits people of the world, the people of the two countries, than fighting and tearing each other apart, than two nuclear superpowers fighting each other. It could be the end of the world. So Mr. Trump came up with this radical idea to normalize relationship with the Russians. And the old oligarchs that have been in place for a long time don't like that, because war is very profitable. It's a profitable business for all of these senators and parliamentarians and their networks of lobbies. It's great business. The death and destruction of others, it's a great business for the investors who are responsible in making billions and billions and billions of dollars through the military industrial complex. Those that are responsible in making the warplanes, right? The bombs, the guns, and the munitions. So Mr. Trump said, look, the United States want to pivot to Asia to contain China. That's economically, it's a bigger threat to the United States global supremacy than fighting Russia and Ukraine. So let's pivot. And in order for us to pivot, let's find a way to build a better relationship with the Russians so that the Russians are not so much dependent on the Chinese. It's a different way of looking at things. Political scientists have warned the government of the United States that it's time to pivot and the Cold War confrontation and stop using Ukraine as a proxy to fight Russia, as a proxy of the European Union, a proxy of NATO, a proxy of the United States to fight Russia. This is not ASU saying. Go listen to any political scientist that has level of credibility and independence in their thinking. They all will tell you. Go listen to intelligence analysts. They all will tell you. Mr. Trump has openly acknowledged that the war in Ukraine is a US proxy war against Russia. So even the president himself has acknowledged this. Even Zelensky has said this. Everyone, including some of the Europeans, they all now acknowledge it's a proxy war to deliver a strategic defeat to the Russian economy. So to somehow the leaders of the European Union, instead of growing their own economy, they believe in order for them to feel socially significant, yes, it's a social need, it's a human need. In order for them to feel socially significant, they must gang up, weaken the economy of Russia, destabilize Russia, so that Europe could be significant. Isn't that interesting? Very interesting mindset. So we spend a lot of billions of dollars to destroy people just because we want to feel socially significant. Isn't that very interesting? And they are very proud. We are the European Union. Warmongers. Right? Okay, all right. That's not the point. The point is, Mr. Trump wants to normalize the relationship with the United States, Russian relationship with the United States. You want to normalize that relationship. So there is someone that has emerged. His name is Steve Witkoff. Mr. Witkoff is a pragmatist. He's a billionaire. He's a real estate billionaire. He was a lawyer, then he went into real estate, made millions, and then he became a billionaire. Mr. Trump wanted someone who can look at things from a practical, realistic perspective. For someone who's not an ideologue, who's not caught up in the old ways of thinking, in old ways of looking at things, and then proposing the same old solutions that have failed for 75 years. So Mr. Trump, upon winning the election, before the elections, was putting a team in place because he knew he was going to win. Was putting a team in place and started asking these people to think differently. Here is what I want to achieve. Here is what I want to help me to do. So once they confirmed him on January 20th as the President of the United States and sworn him in, he appointed a special envoy to the Middle East, Mr. Witkoff. Mr. Witkoff flew into the Middle East, did an assessment. He's one of the first American diplomat to go right into Gaza. He went right into Gaza to do a physical evaluation of how Gaza is, how the war has devastated Gaza. What is the level of devastation? These 2,000 bombs that Americans gave the Israelis. How is the ground? Mr. Witkoff went there. He didn't just sit somewhere and proclaim principles of peace. He went into Gaza and did a physical assessment, the damage the war has caused. Met with Hamas to find out from Hamas what will Hamas want in a peace process. What would the Palestinian people want in a peace process? He didn't dictate it and he didn't impose it on them. He has to find out from them what are their own political aspirations. What are their human, social, identity, cultural aspirations? What do they want? Then he went to Israel. What do the Israeli want? Yeah, obviously the Israeli wants to take the land, to ethnically cleanse the Palestinians and take both West Bank and Gaza. That's what they want. It's okay. But as an envoy, his goal is to understand what each party of the conflict really wants. Let us talk to them. Let us talk to the people of Israel. What do they want? The other factions within the Israeli society, what do they want? The government of Qatar wants to mediate. Why do they want to mediate? Even the mediator wants something. What is their interest to mediate? Why do they want to mediate? There must be something for them. So let's first of all find out what is the interest of the mediator to want to mediate. Listen to this brilliant man. Just listen, please. Video number 2.
Well, there's no doubt I'm always trying to put myself in the shoes of the other person, because a good deal has to work for everybody. But I want to just say this. When I say I speak for the president, it's not because I presume what he's thinking.
Yes.
It's because I ask what he's thinking. He is the president. I'm in my job only because of him. And to me, I give him the respect of always asking the question, where do you want to get to, Mr. President? And so that's critical. So now I know where he stands, and now it's about tactics.
Pause for a second, please. Remember what he said. He's an envoy of the President of the United States. The President of the United States sets the agenda. The President of the United States determines the outcome. He's an envoy. His goal is to work to meet the objectives of the President of the United States. He's not doing it for himself. He has to consult the President. Mr. President, what do you want us to achieve? What will a peace process look like for you? Once you understand what the President wants to achieve, you do a ground assessment. In Gaza and in Israel, to get the understanding and the psychology and the sentiments and the pain of both sides. And then he travels to Qatar to meet with the Crown Prince, MBS, to find out What do they want? Why is mediation so important for them? Let's listen to the rest of the comments from this brilliant man.
From the, as you talk about from the other side standpoint, it's important for me to know or to have a feeling of where the Israelis want to get to. What about the Qataris? They're the mediators at the table. What do they want to accomplish here? What about Hamas?
Okay. That gives you a picture, right? It gives you an overall idea of how he works and how these processes are done. I have a question for you. Is that what the Swiss did? The Swiss came and declared themselves to want to negotiate for Ambazonia. Is that what they did? Is that what they did? No. But they told you they want to negotiate, right? They want to do a peace process, right? The Canadians in 2022, in October, November, and December 2022, they launched the Canada pre-talks. Yes, there was a delegation of Canadian diplomats that went to Yaoundé. They had a consultation with the Ambazonia Governing Council, in consultation that brought together other Ambazonian movements for them to agree on the process and the approach and to go in as one. But there was no Canadian delegation that went to Ambazonia to do a ground assessment of the structure of the occupation and how it affects the Ambazonian people. How that occupation is the root cause of the conflict and how it affects the Ambazonian people. There was no Canadian delegation that went to do a study of this. There was no Canadian delegation that went to Ambazonia to do an assessment of the destruction that the war has caused the Ambazonian people. The destruction of villages, the destruction of communities, the destruction of towns, the destruction of businesses. It's nobody. So now they tell you they want to mediate. What do you want to mediate? There is no assessment. So you see how, when you contrast the work that is being done by Mr. Witkoff, and you contrast it took the Ambazonian people for a ride. It's this surface level of things they want to do. There's no seriousness. And by the way, I met the negotiators. I was part of the negotiating team. There's no seriousness. There's no background. There's no foundation to the peace process because there was no homework that was done that will give them such an informed perspective. It was very shallow. That's why these things have failed. That's why these things have failed. That's why Canada couldn't. If Canada had invested in the process in terms of sending 10, 20, 30, they are political scientists, they are economists, they are human rights lawyers, all right? They are top former, what's this lady's name? That was the former Canadian, the Canadian judge, a Canadian Supreme Court judge that was that was the head of the United Nations Human Rights Council. They could have sent that woman to head the commission to go to Ambazonia to do an assessment across the 13 states of how that war has ravaged the Ambazonian communities. They could have done that. They could have got a report of how the occupation system is all set up and why the people are revolting and resisting and fighting. Nothing of such was done. This process was superficial. When it comes to Ambazonia, the processes are very superficial. When it comes to this other part of the globe, like for them to resolve the conflict in Ukraine, look at the deep studies they are doing. They've sent people to go to all the 4 oblasts to do an assessment. What percentage of these 4 oblasts, these 4 regions, Zaporozhye, Kherson, Donetsk, and Luhansk, what percentage of these 4 oblasts that Russia fully controls? They've done that assessment. So before they start to talk about a peace process, there is a realistic assessment of the conflict on the ground. Now let's go back to the Middle East. Look at the work that is done. I want to ask you the same question. Is that what the Canadians did? You know the answer is no. So why is it that when it comes to Ambazonia, they are using superficial approaches to the conflict? Recently, Norway came up and said the Cameroun government has written a letter through the Norwegians to have a secret negotiation with the Ambazonia Governing Council. We had to put the information out to all of you. Why do they want a secret negotiation? Is the conflict a secret conflict? Is the fighting in Ambazonia secret? So why do they want a secret negotiation? Why is it that the conflict between the Palestinians and the Israelis, why is it that it's an open negotiation? Why is it that the United States and the rest of the world will come and tell the rest of the world, including Norway, that we have appointed an envoy? He's going to the Middle East. He's going to meet with the Israeli officials. He's going to meet with the Palestinian officials. He's going to meet with the Qataris. Everything is public and it's transparent. Obviously, they're not going to put the details out. But in terms of the overall approach, there is some level of transparency, there's some level of credibility, there's some level of authority. We're bringing this education, information to you so that you're never fooled again by the Norwegians, by the French, by the European Union. Anybody that wants to mediate or negotiate and or act as a facilitator to bring this conflict to an end, it must be done transparently and it must be done publicly. There has to be public credibility. That's why the Ambazonia Governing Council is insisting, if Norway wants to negotiate, wants to be a negotiator or a mediator of this conflict, they must make themselves publicly known. There will be no backdoor deals with the Ambazonia Governing Council or the Ambazonian people. Mr. Witkoff is not doing a backdoor deal with the Israelis and Hamas. It's an open international negotiation. So these are lessons. We want to put these things out so that Norway, France, and all of these countries should understand. We are very complex people. we study these principles, we study these processes, and we know international standards and expectations. Ambazonia must be treated the same way. All right? Ambazonia must be treated the same way. Fellow Ambazonians, let's see how much time we get before I talk anything. Okay. All right. We don't come to the end of this broadcast. As we know, right now, the Norwegians, they know say the education will provide them, it be very important. And at the essay, within the discussions where they take place, my name don't they come up within those discussions for Norway. Who be this Mr. Lucas Asu? Who is this man? Eh? Who is this man? Wait till they put them for Twitter. Wait till they put them for out here. They watch them minute by minute. The Norwegians, they watch everything we put them out on a daily basis. Someone understand. The kind of leadership we don't build them for now, be proud. All right? I thank you so much for being part of this discussion today. Shake no day. And take care. Thank you, ACN.
Ambazonia will be offered to you tomorrow. Will you be ready? Will you be ready for governance? Do you have the institutions and expertise in terms of human capacity and state institutions to transform that space into one where our children can say, we fought a good fight? The reason why we are here is not simply because we want to create an alternative platform or pull our resources together. It's because we reject fraud. I don't know why you fight. I know all of us say we fight for independence, and I always remind you, independence is an abstract political construct. You fight for that abstract political construct, not as an objective. There are the micro issues within that political construct that you fight for. The right as a woman to have equal rights within your own country, to have opportunity in terms of education, to have a good health system that can take care of the weak and the sick, stop a woman dying every minute and giving birth. Those are the real issues we fight for. We fight for transparency. I invite every one of you to reject fraud. Reject it from the depth of your heart.